So you know it's not a good sign when you're on a flight and the captain has to come out and address the passengers with a bullhorn. Probably going to be some delays. That's what I'm going to talk about during this little informal talk, folks. Thanks for joining me here. My flight out of Clark over to Bangkok a few days ago. And if you were on that flight, you know, everybody has a different perspective. I'm just going to tell you my perspective. So everything's going good, right? And I'll tell you, it's Cebu Pacific. This is not a bad story. This is just the story of what happened. You know, there was a mechanical issue with the plane, and I think everybody handled it well. I got no problem with anything, but it's still a story. And I'm sure everybody on the flight was either putting it on Facebook or whatever. So I'm going to tell my story. I was sitting up front, so I had a close view of exactly what was going on. So, get to Clark. I didn't have scales for my luggage, so, you know, I kind of gauged it, and I'm like, that's about 20. And a lot of times, any budget airline is very strict on the weight limits, right? And so I was a little bit worried about that. And sure enough, it was like a kilo or two overweight. The young lady was very friendly. She's like, hey, sir, you know, kilo or so overweight. Next time, can you make sure that it's, 20 or under? I'm like, yeah, thank you. Number one, thank you very much. Number two, I'm sorry. Or something of that nature, you know. So I was very lucky. Got checked in, no problem. Got through security, no big problem. Nobody in line. Get to immigration, one guy in front of me, right? No problems there. I said, man, my luck's going pretty good. Everything was going well. You know, so I went and got me some type of little mocha coffee, you know, sip that down, what have you. It's time to board. Get on the plane, and as we're walking, I see a flurry of maintenance workers right there in the doorway. And what they're all focused on is that touch screen device, you know, where the flight attendants push the button, it does the announcement, it's got the lighting control. You know what I'm talking about. A big ass iPad looking thing taped to the wall. Technology. Fucking technology. We just get too complicated and create problems for ourselves. Has the internet and technology really made our lives easier? Anyhow, move forward. So there's several maintenance guys, one of the flight attendants, they're looking, they're pushing buttons. You're like, here we go. You know, when you got more maintenance guys on the plane than flight crew, it might be an issue. So I sit down right there, front and center. And of course, everybody's, you know, getting on, and everybody, you know, their little operation is sort of in the way. They're coming, they're going, they're up in the flight deck. They're obviously working a problem. So everybody gets loaded up. They're still working the problem. I can't remember exactly what the announcements were. You know, hey, we're working a minor maintenance issue, something to that effect. And at that point, I think they said we were 5 minutes ahead of schedule or something, so all was well. As it drags on, they can't fix the problem. Okay, here comes big pot belly, bald-headed dude wearing skinny jeans. He comes up there during all this melee with all these people and wants to talk to the flight attendant, you know, and says something to the effect of, is this a minor issue, or is this going to be a bigger maintenance problem or a bigger issue? And right then and there, my redneck self wanted to say, hey, skinny jeans, sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up, man. There's 130 something other people on this flight wondering the same goddamn thing. Once they have some information, they're going to put it out. And we're all going to find out at the same fucking time. What makes you so goddamn special to get up and come up there and start fucking with the flight attendant? So then it gets worse from there. In my mind, I'm just sitting there like, shut the up, dude. He says, well, you know, I'm a little worried, but my partner, my buddy back there, he's really worried. He's really concerned. Again, you're not helping the fucking problem, dude. And I think what it was those skinny painted on jeans choking your fucking balls, causing you to make bad decisions. So, he said, my buddy, he's really worried. And I think he said something about maybe he wants to get off the plane. I'm not sure. I didn't hear exactly all the things he was saying. But then he says, well, we work for the airlines, so we know about these things. And I'm like, dude, if you work for the fucking airlines, you know out of all these other people on the plane that you're not helping solve the problem. You out of anybody else. Now, if grandma in the back come up there and said, what's going on? I'm a little scared. This is my first flight. Okay. But if you work for the fucking airlines, whatever your position is, you know you're not helping the situation. Go sit your fucking potbelly ass down. Shut the fuck up. That's what I wanted to tell you. But the flight attendant was obviously very patient with your ass and trying to talk to you. Sir, it's a minor issue. They're working the problem. We'll know something soon. And he just won't go away. And then he says, well, can you come back there and tell the same thing you just told me to my buddy? Because he's really worried. But the buddy supposedly works for the airlines too, according to Potbelly's story. And she's like, no, sir, I've got to keep my position here and do this. And she's very patient. Very patient. And he just won't stop running his fucking flapper. So finally, Potbelly goes and sits the fuck down. And that's the whole thing out of this whole incident that really pissed me off. It had nothing to do with the airlines. The rest of the story I'm going to tell you. It was just this jackass. And if he didn't admit that he works for the airlines, I probably would have had some compassion for him. But when you stood up like you're the fucking expert, well, we work for the airlines and we know about these things. What made you special? Nothing. Okay. So anyhow, they finally get the problem fixed. We back up, we get towed out, and then we sort of stop or hang out. Now at that point, I thought we were disconnected from the tow, and we may have been, and we may have taxied a little bit. At that point, I thought everything was good. I just wasn't really paying attention at that point. But then, while we're on the ground, the flight attendant brings out the cart and blocks the way, which means what? The captain has got to open the flight deck door. If in flight they got to piss, they do their security procedures. It's no big secret. Hell, if you've been on a flight, you see what they do. One person has to go in the flight deck. The pilot goes and takes a piss while they block the way with the cart. Just get on any flight. It's not secret. So now there's another problem. You don't got to be a rocket scientist to figure out that apparently there's a communication problem between the flight deck and the flight attendants. Okay? They didn't just pick up the phone and talk or whatever they were doing. They had to block the way. So we sat there for, I don't know, what seemed like, an hour. I don't know. This whole ordeal took place over about a 3-hour period. It's about a 3-hour flight to Bangkok, and I'll just give you a spoiler alert. We finally left for Bangkok when we should have been arriving in Bangkok. So finally, the announcement is made, and maybe I'm getting this out of sequence, but the announcement is made that the captain is going to have to reject the aircraft, and we're returning to the gate. And the way he said it, he was like, I got no choice. Okay, so we return to the gate, And we pull up to the gate, and then he's got to come out and make an announcement. I think that's when the bullhorn came out. This red bullhorn, right? So the flight attendant is, and it's got low volume, you know. It didn't sound that bad, but it was like low volume. So the people in the back couldn't hear. I was sitting right in front of it, and it wasn't that loud. So she hands it off to the captain. The captain says, you know, I got to reject the aircraft, and so we're going to be changing over to another aircraft. I don't know what he said. Something about, you know, got to get it ready. So we sat there for a little while longer, and instead of deplaning, you know, obviously the maintenance guys came back on and they're screwing with it. So I thought, well, maybe they're going to fix that plane and we are going to leave on that plane. They couldn't get it fixed, so instead of deplaning, they closed the door. We get towed from that gate over to another gate. Not sure why. They said something about immigration. I guess the gates, the security, I don't know. So we get towed to another gate and finally deplane. So I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, I took off from gate 13, never left the ground, and a couple hours later I arrived at gate 9 at the same airport. I might be messing up them gate numbers, but I left out of this gate, spent 2 hours, wasn't even in the air, or an hour. Anyhow, I left Clark, I arrived back at Clark at a different gate. So we go out and we're following, there's one guy in front of me, we're going out, we're following the ground crew personnel, leads us back up to a gate, and we're free in the same terminal. So it was like very confusing. Why do we have to back up and go to this gate? We're still in the same terminal, free to roam and go get something to eat, what have you. Oh, now speaking about something to eat, let me back it up. Once the maintenance issue started going down, they brought on cases of water and cases of cookies. And it was a nice big thing of cookies, you know, the round thing of cookies, like 8 cookies in there. So they did bring everybody a snack and some bottled water, which was much appreciated. Okay, so anyhow, we're back in the terminal. I said, you know, of course, everybody else was making a mad dash for the restroom. Now, people were getting up using the CR throughout this process, but the people who didn't, there was a mad rush to the CR. And then we had time to, what did I end up getting? I just got me a Gatorade or something and ate those cookies. And then finally, we got everything together, got on a different aircraft, which the one that wouldn't work was an A320. The one we got on, I think, was an A321. It was a much nicer aircraft, bigger. So it ended up being a better aircraft. It was a different flight crew, and they must have been fresh and, you know, ready to rock, because at that point things went smooth. You know, once we got on the new plane, everybody loaded up, no problems, great flight. So the overall story was, I'm happy with what happened, and I'm going to tell you why. Because for that captain to pull out of there and stop and say, nope, we're not flying this aircraft, that takes some balls, especially if it's over a minor issue or something that's questionable. That takes intestinal fortitude, and it takes balls to say, nope, I'm not flying this aircraft. And I applaud the captain. You made the right decision. I don't care the fact that I was 3 hours late, because how much is your life worth? Is it worth an extra 3 hours? Mine is. So I want to give a shout out to that captain, because just put yourself in his shoes, right? Obviously the big bosses and management, everybody on up the chain would be like, damn, now we got to get a new aircraft. We got to get these people off. We got to get them snacks. They're going to be late. They would much rather have him take off and go as scheduled, right? On something, I would say, minor. But if you look at any of these crash investigations, it's never just one little thing. It's a chain of events where people don't disrupt that train, that process. That most incidents, there's so many places that could have been disrupted. It could have been disrupted at so many different points that it shouldn't have happened. Just like Pearl Harbor. My gosh. 9/11. At so many points during those events, they could have and should have been disrupted and ended much differently. So, this guy said, hell no, I'm not flying this aircraft, ain't gonna do it. Go back, put everybody through the process of what we had to do, made everybody late, but you know what, my ass got there safe. And if you're having communication problems, we don't want to be at 33,000 feet and figure out, okay, something else went out, right? That's not the time to say, damn, I should have turned this bus around and told him I'm not flying the plane. So there you go. That's my story. I'm happy with his decision. And if you're watching, Captain, man, I'm happy you made me 3 hours late. I got no problem with it. Do the same damn thing again, man. Any captain out there, if there's a minor problem that you just don't feel right about, hey, man, I'll back you up. I will back you up as a passenger. Make me late, make me miss my next flight. Just get my ass there in one piece. Flying over the South China Sea, the West Philippine Sea, I don't want to be at the bottom of Davy Jones' locker because somebody decided to roll the dice and they didn't want to buck the system and cause a bunch of problems. Through that whole ordeal, the only thing that raised my blood pressure was pot-belly skinny jeans going up there wasting the flight attendant's time. Don't do that shit no more, man. If you work for the airlines, you know not to do that shit. Sit your ass down or make a decision. I'm not going to fly on this aircraft and get your ass off. Get the hell out of here. I feel much better. So there you go. So no problems, but that's my story. You can't make this shit up. I mean, when the captain came out with that little red bullhorn, I guess you just had to be there, right? I mean, you just had to be there when they're up there with the bullhorn. I started to take a picture, but I said, nah, man, this dude's doing the right thing. He did the right thing. Period. Anyhow. So it all ended well. But it reminded me of a couple more stories, has nothing to do with this. Couple of more stories. Which one you hear? I'll go in chronological order. So years ago, this is 20-something years ago. Should I name the airline? Well, I just named Cebu Pacific. Southwest. The Southwest flight made the news. It was at cruising altitude. There was a rapid decompression or whatever, or there was a pressurization problem at cruising altitude. The captain put her into a dive to get her down to 10,000, you know. There's oxygen at 10,000, 33, people tend to pass out, right? And anyhow, it made the news. It made the news, scared the shit out of everybody, whatever, and I was aware of the incident too. I mean, if you turn the damn news on, that was the day's news all day long about this flight. He landed it safely, no problem. So, a few days later, I'm standing in Phoenix, if I recall correctly. And let's just say back then I was part of a flight crew. So the captain says, hey, I need to talk to everybody. See, all of us flight crew gather around, looks down the jetway, make sure nobody's listening. And I saw the maintenance guys come out of there. He looks down, he makes sure nobody's listening. He says, hey, y'all remember on the news a few days ago, there was that plane that had the pressurization problem at altitude? And we're like, yeah, of course, everybody heard about that. It's the news of the day. Everybody standing there knew about the story. He said, well, that's the aircraft. And of course, everybody's like, what? Are you serious? He said, yeah, 100% serious. That's the aircraft. Okay, well, no big deal. Planes have issues all the time. They're mechanical devices. They need maintenance. That's not the big story, and that wasn't the issue. He said, that's the plane. This will be the first flight since that issue. And he said, but that's not what worries me. He said, when I asked the maintenance guy, hey man, did y'all get it fixed? You sure you got it fixed? And his answer was, yeah, we think so, and rolled out. Now that did not give the captain a warm and fuzzy. We think so. And so that's why he was having this little huddle to say, hey, look, you know, plane had an issue, maintenance fixed the issue, it's signed off on, but that conversation with that maintenance supervisor did not give me a good warm and fuzzy. We think so. It didn't give us a good warm and fuzzy. But that captain was in a different situation. The aircraft had no problems at that point. Go through the checklist, it's going to check out fine. Maintenance signed off, they fixed the issue. So that guy wasn't in a position to reject the aircraft. He had to fly that aircraft or there's a problem. There's no, hey man, planes have problems every day. Once maintenance fixes the problem and signs off, it's inspected, what have you, the supervisor signs off on it, okay, you're good to go. We think so, was the answer. And so he said, hey, well, you know, we're rolling, but I just wanted to let you, the flight crew, know everything up front in case something happens. That's what the issue is going to be. I'm going to have to get her back down to a safe altitude. So needless to say, I wasn't taking no rest on that flight. I was A&O times 3, alert and oriented times 3 the entire flight. Everybody else was too. I had a happy story. There wasn't no problems. There was no problems. But I'll never forget that. And what I thought about was, we knew, but all the passengers didn't know. I always thought about that. And after that incident, you always wonder, you know, you always wonder things. So, well, I just thought of one other story. In relation to that, which is related, totally different incident, totally different flight. I was leaving for Atlanta up to Cleveland. And I was going to a George Strait concert, and my old lady was up there waiting on me. She's going to pick me up from the airport. We're going straight to George Strait. Okay, this flight that we were on, I think it was I can't remember. I can't remember the airline. I want to say Delta, but I can't remember. They were having some maintenance issues, what have you. And what they finally decided was, and it was some type of pressurization issue. What they finally decided, they came out and said, hey, look, we're not sure if this issue is going to be an issue, if it's an issue, whatever. So being that it's a short flight, we're just going to fly at 10,000 feet the whole way. You'll get a beautiful view. We might go down to 8,000, whatever it was. And so we flew from Atlanta to Cleveland, not at 34,000 feet. We were below 10,000. So you didn't have to have the cabin pressurized. Now look, I'm not a pilot. I just play one here on YouTube. The only thing I've ever taken the controls of is a Cessna 172 or 182. I have to look. And ultralights. Maybe you can't do shit like that these days, but back then, that's what we did. That's what they said, and that's what we did. And I made it to George Strait. Thank you very, very much to that captain. And apparently he had a girlfriend or something up there too, to go to that extent, I guess. I don't guess there's anything against it. You're going to burn more fuel, right? You're going to burn more fuel at a lower altitude. It's going to take a little bit longer, slower speeds, but we made it up there. It's not a problem. You can fly the damn plane at 10,000 feet. But that's what happened on that issue, that incident. All had a happy ending. And what's the other one I was going to talk about? I talk about it in my book. The details 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, were much fresher in my head. But the bottom line is, leaving out of Kabul, Afghanistan, and we're loaded up, and I think it was a 767. It could have been a 75. Maybe I wrote it down in the book. I got it in my notes somewhere. And we're backing up to leave the gate, and all of a sudden, boom! Now look, at the time, you know, people would lob mortars at the airport, at the tarmac, at the runway. Either mortars, 107 rockets, what have you. So initially, everybody, I think, on the plane thought it was a rocket. You know, not hitting the plane, but hitting close. It was a thud. And so there was a little bit of confusion as to what was going on. Then the captain came over, and he was flustered. He should have just kept his mouth shut and not said nothing. But he came over, and he was excited, and he grabbed the radio when he should have just done nothing. What had happened was the ground crew had backed the damn aircraft wing into a building. I don't know, does that technically classify as a plane crash? Do I get credit for that? Do I get my plane crash ribbon? So the good news is it wasn't a rocket, it wasn't a 107. That would have been some really bad news because we all would have burned up in that barbecue grill. We didn't, but there was a lot of disappointment initially because everybody was, you know, most everybody on the flight were civilian, contractors, whatever, been there for 6 months, a year, going on their vacation. Obviously people trying to get out of Afghanistan, get to Dubai and go wherever they're going from there. So after some initial confusion, then the word finally went around. We're looking out the window. Oh, cool, you backed the shit into the fucking building. Now we know what happened. We go to deplane. And so everybody on the flight experienced what I just described. But what I don't think everybody on the flight saw when we got off and were walking around the aircraft, only a few of us saw this, that the nose gear, it was one of the gear, I think it was the nose gear. There was hydraulic fluid like coming off of the gear, and there was a pile of hydraulic fluid right there where we stopped. Now, I don't know if it was something leaking up in the aircraft. I have no idea where the hydraulic fluid was coming from, but it was a big puddle of it right there. And one of the ground crew went over and looked at it, and me and a couple other guys are looking at it. And so that initial confusion, we're trying to figure out, hey, is that connected to the wing striking the building? Or is that a separate maintenance issue? Was it divine intervention that we were losing hydraulic fluid from some system? And if that cat hadn't have backed that aircraft into that building, would we have taken off with hydraulic fluid fucking going everywhere and had a major problem? Was that divine intervention? A lot of things in my life lately, I haven't been able to explain too many coincidences. It's like something else is going on here, and the only thing you can come up with is divine intervention. Just like that incident in Kabul. So I don't know what I don't know if that hydraulic leak and that puddle of hydraulic fluid was connected to the wing hitting the building. Two separate incidents. The hydraulic fluid started first or had been festering. Then the guy hit the building. I don't know. But as you can tell, it's not good to take off an aircraft that's leaking a big old puddle of hydraulic fluid. So that Kuya may have saved our asses. That may be going out on a stretch, and I don't know, what happened to that aircraft, what the end story was. I have no idea. What they did, they went over and cranked up this old, what the hell was it? It was, I think it was, I know what it was. It was an old 737. And it seemed like that thing had been sitting over there parked for a while. Because when you got on there, it just sort of had that musty smell, whatever. It didn't matter. That captain was ready to get the hell out of there too. Went over there, cranked that shit up, And we left up out of there on this old ass 737 and made it up out of there. And everything went well. Served beer on the flight. You know, some of them guys, you were under general order number 1, which meant you couldn't drink. Now, of course, a lot of us did. But the average Joe sitting out somewhere, you know, on a fob didn't have access to liquor. So when they come around with them first beers, everybody was, I guess you have to just be deprived of something for so long for it to be that wonderful, right? But yeah, so that was my other incident. And I got a bunch more if I dig in the back of my head that I could talk about. But the point of the story is, I guess here's the lesson learned. And the thing you might want to think about next time you think about getting pissed off at the flight crew or the airline for delays. And folks, I bitch about it all the time, okay? I bitch about it all the time. But here's what I know. If I fly Cebu Pacific, they're usually late. But you know what? They're friendly. They get me there on time. So if they're late, if that's the worst thing that happens to you during that particular day, deal with it. If your flight is late, maybe it was because of a maintenance issue that they had to fix. And exercise a little bit more patience with the airline staff. Now look, I live over here in Southeast Asia, and people over here, compared to America, we're not ratcheted up road rage, ready to pop some caps into somebody's ass if they look at us wrong. It's not like that over here. It's much more, people are much more calm, much more understanding. They're patient, quiet. So not like it is in America. All these fights on the planes, fighting with the gate agent. You know, I've seen these clips. Not that I seek them out, but they're just in your face. Anytime you open up the web page on a news site. Why is that? That's a big cultural problem. But if you look at it in a different light, hey, the flight got canceled for maintenance issue. Don't get mad at that gate agent. Don't get mad at that captain. Don't get mad at anybody. You fucking thank your lucky stars that somebody identified the maintenance issue while the aircraft is safely on the ground. Somebody had the balls to speak up and say, nope, we're not flying this aircraft. The maintenance guy said, okay, yeah, we agree. Be damn glad that they found the problem on the ground and cancel your flight. Because you don't want to find out that you're leaking a big old puddle of hydraulic fluid at 33,000 feet over the mountains. Okay? So there you go. Maybe the next time your flight is late, next time my flight is late, I'm going to think about all these stories and I'm going to chalk it up. My flight is late, or my flight got canceled, or we have to go back to the gate and change aircraft because there is divine intervention stepping in and saying, nope, it's not your time. It's not your time. And if that happens, and I was going to, but in the melee and everything, you know, I was first off, so I didn't really have time. If I had been the last man off the plane and everybody had cleared out, you know, I would have shook hands with the captain and said, hey man, thank you. Thank y'all very much. It's all good for me. Ain't no complaints here. So in the past, of course, I have complained like everybody else. But I run this show, and this show is about my daily life and my daily frustrations. No matter where I'm at on the globe, I just explain to you what's going on. Life, living outside your home country, is not always perfect. So if I paint you this picture that everything is rosy 24 hours a day, that's a big lie. Anybody who paints you that picture, even if you're living in the Bahamas, you're living in Colombia, you could be living at a 5-star resort, and every day ain't gonna be perfect. Okay? But I will be much more tolerant now that I've thought about this and thought about all my past experiences. If that flight's late, I'm not complaining. If the flight gets canceled, I'm gonna laugh. Gracias, mi Dios, for just saying, hey, it ain't your time. That's how I feel about it. Folks, thanks for listening to my story. I hope the audio is good. I'm back on my Sennheiser mics. I've had the Sennheiser wireless system for what? Since 2012. How long is that? 13 years? I've had like 13 years and I rarely use it because I got to put batteries in it. It's not just dropping in. I should have bought the drop-in charger. It takes a couple minutes to set up, where the other ones, these little microphones right here, you just pull them out and they automatically turn on. They're too easy. But the audio is not as good as what you're listening to right now. Crazy. My best gear is 13 years old. Anyhow. So let me know what you think. What's your thoughts? Do you complain when your flight's late? Have you ever lost your fucking mind when the flight got canceled? Because think about it. When the airlines have to cancel a flight, it costs them money. It costs them extra manpower. It costs them a lot of headaches. They don't want to cancel that damn flight. They want that flight to go where they don't have to mess up their schedule. They're doing it for a reason. And we just need to be more tolerant. Especially all y'all in America fighting on damn airplanes, throwing coffee on the gate agents. My gosh, what has American society, what's the word, devolved into? That we have fights on airplanes. I'm a product of the 70s and the 80s. I was flying when I was, I think my first flight, I was 5 years old, what have you. Parents got a divorce, figured out. I was flying late 70s, unaccompanied, and it was a totally different experience back then. It was an experience, a wonderful, wonderful experience. You would get to the airport, people were dressed up. I mean, I'm talking suit, coat, tie, had their best studs on. People were like, hey, how you doing? Friendly to one another. It was an absolute wonderful experience. As a kid, I got to go up to the flight deck, meet the captain, the first officer. They give you these little white plastic airplanes and these little wings. I felt like I was a pilot. I had so much stuff when I come out of there, I thought I was a pilot. It was truly just a wonderful experience. Everybody treated each other wonderfully. The only thing I didn't like, but back then, remember this is a different era, you could smoke on the aircraft. So when people would fire up the cigarettes, I didn't really appreciate that. My parents didn't smoke, so nobody smoked around me. But, occasionally you'd get in the car with that uncle who smoked, and he'd only crack the fucking windows like that, and you're back there in that gas chamber. I'd always put my nose right up to the crack so I could breathe. That shit killed me. And he was the only jackass that did that. But occasionally, you're staying with your aunt. You're riding down the road with that jackass smoking in the fucking car with kids in the back seat choking. But, it wasn't that big of a deal. But that's the only thing I didn't like. The food on the aircraft was like gourmet. It was delicious. I'm talking some great food. And now we got people fighting on the airplane. What happened to society? That's another video that we could talk about, I guess, till the end of time. I just remember back them good old days of flying. It's like my buddy said. Shout out to you, man. You were over in Hanoi. You're back in the Philippines now. We were drunk at Tequila Reef that night. And you said, if I found a lamp and rubbed it and a genie popped out and said, I'm going to grant you one wish. He said something to the effect of, just send me back to Magsaysay Drive, 1982. You know, Subic Bay. That's all I want you to do. And you know, wow, wouldn't that be great if you had one wish? Just send the world back to the era of the 70s. I can't speak for the 60s and the earlier. Obviously, I wasn't around back then. But damn it, I'll take the late 70s. Where I can get on a plane and have that same experience today. My goodness. All right, I've talked enough, folks. I've said enough. Leave your comments down below and let me know what you think. But shout out to everybody at Cebu Pacific. Wonderful flight. Absolutely wonderful flight. And I had booked that same thing so far in advance. I got a great price on it. Yeah. And shout out to the captain and the crew. We'll see y'all on the next one, my friends. Y'all have a good one. And peace out. I talk so much, I gotta get me a drink. Isn't that a beautiful stein? Oh yeah. It's just a beautiful little stein right there I like drinking out of. What's in it? You might ask. Well, smoke, I can't tell a lie. There is coal sing high in that stein. Some of y'all are betting, oh, he'll fall off the wagon, he's on the wagon, he won't make it. Can't lie to you. I cannot tell a lie. That is delicious sing high. But wait. Come on, I can't lie to you. Right there. It's sing high. It's focusing on my eye. See if it'll focus. It's sing high. Smart micro filter sing high drinking water. Y'all thought I done went back to drinking. So I wasn't lying. This is Sing High, same people who make the Sing High beer that's in my refrigerator. I got 3 beers from when I stopped drinking over a year and a half ago. Haven't touched them. They're sitting in there. They stare me in the face. But I also have Sing High drinking water. So I said, you know what? That'd be funny just to mess with my donkeys and my viewers out there. I'll just drink my water out of the stein and everybody think I'm back to drinking that beer. Not yet. That's just some good cold H2O. With that, I'm out of here. See y'all on the next one. Sometimes I crack myself up.